Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the co-owner and creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant deactivating strategies. So I just finished a webinar on this, and I was pretty inspired by some of the amazing questions we had inside of the school, and I really wanted to talk about just some key concepts and ideas at a high level in this video that really touch on what deactivating strategies are made up of so we can be aware of them, the importance of identifying your deactivating strategies and working through them in order to become secure, and then small different manifestations of how a fearful avoidant deactivates versus a dismissive avoidant deactivates. And maybe some steps or strategies just to sort of become really aware. So before I dive into all of this, our courses for July are that I'm super excited about. Our courses inside the school for July are about communication, all about communication, scripts for communication. We have over 50 different scripts, and the course is basically modeling that out. And one thing I've realized through so many amazing people's shares inside of the school is that we don't get proper communication modeled to us almost at all growing up. And we have a really hard time learning to express our feelings and feel like our needs should be heard and that we should be understood. And the absence of that just creates a tremendous amount of invisible walls between ourselves and other people and relationships. But by learning proper and healthy communication and learning the steps to it and learning how to actually use a framework and foundation that gets you seen, heard, understood, helps you to actively listen to other people, it empowers you to actually feel like, okay, I'm loved in a more unconditional way because I'm loved for all the things about me that are real and true and valid, like what I need, what I'm feeling. And when that's understood and accepted, we have a much greater capacity to give and receive love. So very excited about that one. And it comes with a book of all the 50 different scripts. So if you're in this situation, what to do, if you're a dismissive avoidant and you're needing space, if your dismissive avoidant has taken space and you feel confused, here is what to say step by step, and you can substitute different things in and out. And the second course is overcoming loneliness and the psychology of connection, which is breaking down and deconstructing what loneliness is all about, and actually being able to transform the wounds that exist within ourselves that allow us to feel so lonely if we are experiencing that, which is so important during some of the isolation and challenges that have gone on in the world recently. And then the psychology of connection, steps for how to connect and the actual stages of connection. There's 6 major stages of connection with friends, family, new relationships, anybody that we are meeting and connecting to. So the coupon code for all this stuff is with you. It's all one word. I'll put a link in the actual video that's a little eye with a dot you can click on as a card, and a link in the description box below. And let's talk about the fearful and dismissive avoidance and deactivating. So number one, we have to understand what a deactivating strategy is. And I think a huge barrier to relating and to connection from a fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant to their loved ones can be the fact that when we have a wound and we start deactivating, we build this narrative about another person and pain around it. Oh, this person is bad, or this person doesn't care about us, and we tell these stories and we create through that narrative a huge amount of distance between ourselves and somebody else. Now, fearful avoidance and dismissive avoidance deactivate in generally different ways. I notice that fearful avoidance tend to activate almost as much as they deactivate because it tends to be an equilibration type of thing based on both sets of core wounds that they have. Whereas dismissive avoidants tend to deactivate more often, but to a lesser degree. And when fearful avoidants do deactivate, it tends to be stronger and more intense because it's basically relative to how much stored pain is coming up. So if they have a 10 out of 10 of pain, they're going to have a 10 out of 10 of deactivation, right? And so that pain or suffering that takes place is going to be what can sometimes push a relationship or destroy a relationship if somebody pulls away altogether because of deactivation. Now, I want to talk about the difference between deactivation and doubt, right? And in order to do so, we have to understand what the difference really is. So think of deactivation as being based on pain, okay? It's based really on fear and woundedness. And when we think about the future, you can't actually fear the future. Like a lot of deactivating is like, oh, what if this person does this in the future? Okay, I have to deactivate. We can't actually fear the future. The future is completely neutral. And if you imagine that like you have a child and you take that child into, the car for the first time, they're not going to be like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Who's driving? This is scary, because they don't have any preconceived concepts or ideas about what it means to drive or to be in a car. So a baby is not going to fear a car. It's once we get programmed with things from our past and then project them into the future that anxiety or distress can come about. So it's once we go, oh, like, I've heard that cars are dangerous. I've heard that so many people get into car accidents. It's, oh, mom had a car accident. She tells me about it all the time. Now I start to fear getting into that same situation because of how tumultuous it sounded, right? It's once we get the programming that we then can project scary things onto the future. And I want to use that as an analogy to sort of like highlight what deactivating is. Deactivating isn't about some fear of the future, fear of commitment, fear of being trapped in the future or stuck. It's actually about unresolved subconscious wounds that exist from the past that need to be cleaned up and reprogrammed or equilibrated so that you can go into relationships without having to deactivate from that, okay? Now, the difference between deactivating and a doubt is really about the fact that deactivating is a solvable problem, okay? When we are deactivating, what's happening is you're triggered, and that trigger is so close to you because you're so invested in it and you're unconscious and kind of like in a trance of being invested in it. You're like seeing the movie in your mind of all the bad things that could happen or all the bad things that the person's doing and reacting and feeling all the emotion that goes with it and sort of like, creating pain within yourself on autopilot, not intentionally, of course, but because of unresolved past pain points. And then you're needing to cope with that pain. And you have more built-in positive associations and negative associations to coping by withdrawing, pushing somebody away, basically, fighting as a form of deactivation or flighting as a form of deactivation. And so both of those cause you to push a person away and try to withdraw in order to protect yourself. Now, there are different types of deactivating strategies and behaviors that go with the strategies, right? If you look, like deactivating itself at its root is based on a wound that creates all these thought patterns and then a behavioral coping mechanism. That coping mechanism can be to yell to deactivate. That coping mechanism can be to push somebody away by saying you doubt the relationship, you don't want to be with them, you need space. It can be to physically flee the scene of an argument. Like it can be all these different things. But how you're going to notice if it's a deactivating strategy versus a doubt is to check through these three basically key questions. Number one, am I feeling this way because I have a need that I haven't expressed or isn't being met? Because sometimes that creates pain when we have an unmet need. Like maybe you feel disconnected, you have a need for connection, and you and your partner have been really busy and you go, oh, we're growing apart, this is never going to work, and you start deactivating. But really, if you could slow it down into slow motion, you first felt pain from the disconnect. That pain probably had some triggered association from past experiences. Then you sourced that person as the cause of your pain instead of recognizing that it's a need that needs to be communicated. And then you need to cope with the person causing you pain outside of you by protecting yourself from them. But really, in the intricacies of what took place at the subconscious level, you had a wound that was activated or a need that was unmet, and that hurt you, and then you associated that person as the source of your pain when actually the program within you or the unmet need within you was the source of your pain. And because you weren't able to make that distinction, you push the person away to protect yourself from them, but that wound or that unmet need is just going to stay alive. And so you have to first ask yourself, am I deactivating because of a need I have not communicated or that is not being met? And if so, how can I go have that conversation to make this a solvable problem? Once I say, hey, I'm feeling disconnected, I want more quality time, or let's do acts of service for each other because those are our love languages, whatever it is. Like once you have a strategy to meet the need, there's no reason to deactivate. So that's number one. Number two, am I feeling this way because of a trigger more than something in this moment? Is this more about me? Let's say somebody is acting rude, and maybe you go, oh my gosh, I feel disrespected. And maybe somebody was just sharp with their tone, but maybe you took that as like, I am disrespected. And maybe you're reacting like an 8 or a 9 out of 10 to somebody's kind of coldness or sharpness that might be to somebody without a wound of I am disrespected. They might have felt it as like a 2 out of 10. And if your reaction from your conscious mind's perspective seems or feels like it might be disproportionate to like what's actually happening, chances are this is more about a wound that's causing you to deactivate because something's been ignited at the subconscious level than it is about the experience that's happening itself. And so you're protecting yourself from the person, but you're actually protecting yourself from the wound. And so you want to get clear about that, because that like really has a tremendous impact on a relationship, right? So you want to question, is this more of an old trigger or wound? And can I question that story? Can I communicate a boundary or a need to shift the dynamic? Like, hey, I notice that like I feel disrespected when you speak coldly or with a sharp tone. Can you please work on that? Because I want us to have like healthier communication, and I know it doesn't feel good from my end. And can I work on that story within myself and see how I'm not disrespected by that person's sharp tone? And so, those are like forms of deactivating, okay? It's really about, is this a solvable problem, okay? Now, if you go to somebody and you communicate a need or a wound multiple times and the person keeps repeating the behavior, now we're in a territory where like, hey, this is doubt. These are red flags, because there's something that's happening that you've requested because it's a pain point for you, or it's a non-negotiable for you in a relationship, and the person isn't changing or working on their behavior. They're not showing up. And then we get into doubt and red flag territory. And then you have to be able to assess as a person, is this something worth working on or breaking through? Or is this something that's really important to me that's truly a non-negotiable? And by me making this okay, it's a violation to my sense of self. And then we know, hey, probably not the right relationship. So those are some easy strategies. I did do like almost a 2-hour webinar on like the in-depth components of this. About deactivating. This is kind of like a high-level version. We're doing 4 live webinars a week in the school right now about different topics, open Q&A, just to really give people like personal time to get their questions answered. And so we have like a webinar library right now with over 120 different webinars on a whole bunch of different topics, as well as 30 plus pre-recorded courses that are in depth with workbooks, modules, everything. So dive in there if you're interested. We have an open chat forum in there for people who are members. It's like personalized, all these different really amazing features. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you're getting a lot of value out of this channel, and I will see you in the next video.